I'm Steve from This Week with Cars. A few days ago I was driving my 1966 Austin Cooper S, and I was driving it back from my house. I was on the interstate doing about 70 miles an hour, and all of a sudden the car quit running and I had to pull over to the side. It didn't happen slowly, it just happened all of a sudden. So that leads me to think that it's probably an ignition problem. I had to push the car a mile to an exit to get off the interstate to be at a safe place to look at it. I thought maybe I would tap the fuel pump, see if that made it run. I could hear that the fuel pump would run periodically, so I didn't think it was a fuel problem and there was nothing I could do. So I came back, got my tow truck, picked it up off the side of the interstate, and here it sits. So let's take a look at it and see if we can figure out why it stopped running. Let's get the bonnet open. Everything looks in place. I'm going to start with my spark tester, put it in line with one of the spark leads, and we'll see if it has any ignition at all. Alright, I have my spark tester. I'm going to pull off one of the ignition leads, put it onto my tester, and then plug the tester onto the spark plug. Now when I crank it over, if we have spark, we'll see this flash. I looked back at the video and saw there was no flash here, so that means that we're not getting any spark to the spark plugs. Now, problems that could be, we might not have any power to the coil. It could be the coil itself, or it could be a problem with the distributor. So first I'm going to start by checking to see if the coil even has any power. Maybe the fuse blew, maybe a wire came unattached. So I'm going to connect this back up, and I'll grab my multimeter. I have my multimeter and I'm going to set that to the voltage setting. And this is set to DC volts. This car is still a positive ground car, so I'm going to connect my positive lead to the engine somewhere. And then if I have power here at the coil, when I connect this lead, we should see it read here. Now, I think I left the key off, so I'm going to go turn the key on and we'll see if we have voltage there. So you can see I have 13 volts, so power is going to the coil. So I know that the fuses, everything like that, the key, that is all okay. Now I want to check and see if I have any voltage coming out of the coil. Alright, we can see there's almost no voltage coming out of the coil. Since this one is so easy to get to, and the distributor is a little harder to get to, I'd have to take the grill off. Let's just disconnect the wires from the coil and test that real quick, and then we'll know if that's good or bad, and we can move on to the distributor if this is not the problem. The way you test a coil is you hook up your multimeter and you set it to the resistance setting. Now, it doesn't matter which terminal I connect these up to, just connect your meter up to both terminals on the coil, so that you can measure the resistance of the coil. And right now it's not showing us anything, so that means that the coil is damaged. It's an open circuit. There is no electricity traveling from this terminal over to this terminal. I'm going to go grab a new coil and we'll measure that one, make sure it's good, and then we'll put it in place and try this and see if it runs. Okay, here's a coil that I had sitting around. Let's connect up the multimeter and make sure that this one is good. Okay, it looks like this is a 3.5 ohm coil. So let's hook up this one and see if the engine runs. Coils have a positive and a negative terminal. I'm going to want to hook it up the same way that it was before. It will technically work backwards, but it won't have as strong of a spark if you have it connected backwards. Since this is a positive ground car, my positive terminal is going to be grounded from the chassis, which means that that's the wire that runs from the distributor. The distributor points close, which ends up grounding this terminal to the engine. So my power wire, which in this case is negative, is this one right here, which comes from the keyed switch ignition. So I want to hook it up with the positive terminal going to the distributor for a positive ground car. Alright, I've got the new coil connected. Let's change this back to volts. Remember, this is a positive ground car, so I'll put my red lead on the engine. We'll see we have power going into the coil, and we have some power coming out of the coil. So let's try to fire the engine up and see if it runs this time. It looks like that did it. I just need to transfer this coil over into this bracket and I'll be all set. Well, that was a quick little tip for you today. If you want to see more videos like this, comment below and click subscribe.